So, see, it's going to be a real surprise that Jim is going to introduce his son. So there you go.
So yes, it gives me great pleasure to introduce my own son as the speaker for today. I do want to give credit to Will Thompson there. Raise your hand, Will. It was Will's suggestion that James be our speaker today, so he gets credit for that. James and Will have been friends since high school. James graduated from Oak Ridge High School in 2009. In high school, James was mostly in for his friendships, for fun, and for basketball. He played varsity basketball for 3 years. He really didn't emphasize studying too much during that high school period. But he graduated and went on to college at DePaul University in Chicago. And in his freshman English class, at the beginning of it, his teacher was passing out to the students, passing back their first composition papers. And then he chose to read one in particular that he thought was very well written. And James is sitting there and he realizes his teacher is reading his paper. And so he thought, hey, maybe my professor thinks I'm smart. So James thought, well, then I better act like I'm smart. So James went on to graduate from DePaul University, summa cum laude, with straight A's and a major in marketing. Now, it wasn't very long after graduating that he realized he didn't want to do marketing for life. So he came back to his home and then went to UT and got a master's degree in counseling. And now he's been a counselor at Farragut High School for 5 years and also been an assistant basketball coach at Webb High School. And his topic this morning is, what's it like being a high schooler in 2021? But before he speaks, I'd like to just tell you a short anecdotal story about James. I made a deal with James and his sisters when they were all young that if they didn't smoke, drink, do drugs, or have sex before high school graduation, they could have a one-on-one trip with their dad after graduation anywhere in the world that they chose. So James was about 7 years old and he was playing football in one of his friend's backyards and he fell and skinned his knee. And his friend's older brother said, "I'm going to get some rubbing alcohol for your knee." To which James exclaimed, "No, no, you can't put any alcohol on me or I'll lose my trip with my dad." So many years later, James and I had a very wonderful trip together to Egypt. So please welcome James as our speaker this morning.
Make sure this is on. Of course, it turned itself off, right? That's much better, isn't it? Right. So James, you could, let's see if we get all this hooked up. Maybe hook that up there. And when we have questions at the end, if you would, and you could take your mask off. Right?
Okay, cool.
And the questions at the end, if you'd repeat the question so that people on Zoom can.
Okay.
Hear it. And you have to tell a story about your dad.
Oh.
Oh, never mind. No.
Okay, so my dad and I, for a little period of time, he'd been asking to do like outdoor adventures with me. So there was, right before I was about to finish my senior year of college, he asked me to go rafting or canoeing, whitewater canoeing, up on the Nantahala in North Carolina. So we get up there, we have like a lunch packed, we've got coolers with drinks and waters and all that sort of stuff. And apparently when you do whitewater canoeing, you're supposed to like sit on your knees so that you're lower to the water. We didn't know that. And I don't think he could have anyways, because he'd either had knee replacements or was about to have knee replacements. So we tipped over within like 50 yards. The canoe rolled all the way down the river. It shattered to pieces. And in the meantime, he had the car key in the Velcro pocket of his pants. So the car key got lost in the river. We were in an area with no cell phone service. So we got back to the car. We had to hail down somebody else to drive into town where they had cell phone service, to call a locksmith, and to get the locksmith to come out and create a new key for the van for us to drive back. So we drove. We probably woke up at 7, got home at like 9, did about 30 seconds of canoeing. And so then a couple of years later, he asked me to go on a backpacking trip for a weekend. So we did a backpacking trip, and he had just had knee replacements. And we learned pretty quickly that the trip was a lot more strenuous. Like the route was a lot more strenuous than we realized.
For some reason, I don't know why. You don't see the speaker. Lydia's the one operating.
And broke a rib. And we're sitting there at night trying to figure out how he's going to get
audio visual.
Like he'd broken his rib, can barely breathe, like he's in a ton of pain. And we're trying to figure out how the heck are we going to get out of there? I mean, I hardly sleep that night because I'm trying to figure out, like, am I going to have to hike all the way back with all of our bags and then figure out the way to get like what's the life care helicopter to fly in here and get my dad out of here? But he just strapped up the backpack and tightened it up and rolled out the next day. But afterwards he said, you know, James, if I were you and my dad asked me to do any sort of adventure, I don't think I'd go. But then a couple of years later, we went on a kayaking trip in Mexico and it was a lot of fun. But he did get sick. I guess I'll have to ask to click through, or do I just click this? Okay, yeah, it's got a lot of buttons, so hopefully it'll go pretty well. But if you want to go to the next slide, like my dad said, I've been working at Farragut for 5 years. When I first started, I kind of thought that it was going to be very similar to what it was like in high school for me. But I quickly found out that it's a totally different world that the kids are living in. And I think the primary reason is just the way we use phones, the way we use technology, the way we use phones. It's a totally different world that they're living in. And it's got so many little intricacies that that they analyze and use in different ways that I think people a little older than them just don't, like even myself, I don't understand them. I know what they're doing, but I don't understand the rationale behind it. And it's a very, very different world than we lived in. And then I think the pressure has gotten a lot higher. So the first thing we'll do is just name these apps. So if you want to click the first one, does everybody know what this one is? Okay, so you can click. The next one, Twitter, okay. The next one, okay, Instagram, yep. Next one, Snapchat, okay. And then the next one, TikTok. Okay, so we know the apps. The kids do not use Facebook. They don't use Facebook whatsoever. And they hardly use Twitter. The main reason kids will use Twitter is like for sports. They'll, like, if they're an athlete, they'll post their stuff to try to get recruited for sports. And then maybe some school news, but they hardly use Twitter. So if you want to, the next one just circles Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok. So I'm going to go through and kind of explain the different ones and how they use them and how that has an effect. Because I do think, like, we probably have a pretty good understanding of a lot of the aspects of high school life, but the way that these create different anxieties and different stressors are the things that I think are very different than the way it's been in the past. So how does Instagram affect the kids? If you want to just click the next one. This is the self-worth. The kids' self-worth is, I hate to say it, but a ton of it is derived from the numbers that come on Instagram. And I think the big difference between Instagram and Facebook is when you're on Facebook, you're a friend with someone. So if someone requests to be a friend with you, then you're each friend. So your friend count goes up. On Instagram, someone can request to follow you, but you don't have to follow them back. So kids get a ton of self-worth based on having a lot of followers and following very few people. And in all honesty, kids will go in, and if they think that they're following too many people to where it doesn't look as cool, they'll go unfollow people so that their follower count goes down and their ratio is higher in terms of followers to following. And then the other thing is on their pictures, they'll post on pictures and they get a certain number of likes, and that can dictate how they feel about the picture. Like if they post a picture that they thought they looked really cute in, if they post a picture and it doesn't get enough likes for what they think, then it can defeat how they feel about themselves. And you'll see kids who will post something and in 10 minutes it doesn't get the number of likes they thought that they should have gotten, so they'll delete it. And then they'll post it again at a later time of day, hoping that more people are online or more people will see that picture at that time of day, and hope that they get enough likes to validate how they feel about themselves or how they felt about how they were in that picture. So I think it's a scary game to play, where you're always worried about the numbers, and that's validating how you feel about yourself. Constant comparison to others' highlights. Like I think of myself, and like Sunday afternoon, I'll mow the grass, and then sometimes I'll order a pizza and I'll sit around in like sweatpants and watch TV. If kids are doing that, they're sitting around in sweatpants and they think of themselves in that moment, but then the other people are only posting the best moments of their life, where they look the best, where they're doing the most fun things, where they're with the quote unquote coolest people or in the coolest places. And they're sitting there comparing their normal life to someone else's highlights, right? And I don't know how many of you saw like on 60 Minutes the other day, or they did a Wall Street Journal study talking about the effects of Instagram and how kids are starting to feel about their self-worth. But I think it was like 13% or 14% of kids said that Instagram made their suicidal thoughts worse. And then like, I think somewhere around 10% said that it made their self-worth worse, and that it could actually be the cause of creating suicidal thoughts, that Instagram could. And I think it's that comparison of always comparing your normal day to someone else's highlights. So I'll show you a couple comments. I redacted like who said it and whatnot, but I took screenshots of a couple former students' comments pages, and it'll show you that there's really an emphasis in terms of what people value on how appearance is and how ability, like physical ability is. And I compared female and male comment sections because they're different, but they're similar. And then that slide will also show you kind of I'll tell you more about it here in a second. So if you want to click the female one. Yeah. So I don't know how well you can read this, but this is a former student who posted like she was on vacation at the beach. And the comments are cutie, I love you. Okay, cute, so pretty. Oh my God, pretty ×2, beauty, gorgeous, cutie, you're so pretty. It's literally all about how she looks. So what does that say to the other kids? All that matters is how I look. Like nothing, like if you're getting all your worth from an app and all that matters on this app is how I look, it's very hard for them to get the message across that how you treat people or how you like perform in certain other things other than athletic ability matters, right? And then what I learned recently, I just have like random conversations with kids about this sort of stuff. And a lot of these are what they call fake. So what they say is that they actually know that some of these people in their comment sections hate them, but they're just commenting cutie or so pretty just to keep up a certain image because they think that other people will think they're a nicer person if they're commenting that sort of stuff, but that it's also somewhat malicious because it's just a bold-faced lie in terms of how they feel about them. So that's a female's comment section. And I'll be honest, if you go to an adolescent female's Instagram page and you click on the comments on a picture, it's that over and over and over again. If you don't go to the male one. So this was a former basketball player that I had, and this was like a highlight tape that he posted. So the comments are, you are super tough. too hard, fire emoji, love, pound and heart emoji, go crazy, Brody, going bonkers, baller, shine bright. It's all about his physical ability, right? I don't know. There's not as many, like I haven't heard as many kids talk about malicious comments in terms of like physical ability with guys, but this has nothing to do with what type of person he is, like what his relationships are like. It's all related to his physical ability. And kids will post, like guys will post pictures, and these are a lot of the comments. So I think when they post things, they're looking for numbers to validate themselves. The comments, they're reading the comments and they're not certain if they're authentic or not. And then they're just getting the validation that it's all about how they look or how they can perform physically. So I think Instagram's a dangerous game, but I think if you'll go to the next one, I think Snapchat's the most dangerous game, honestly. Like when Will and I were in high school, or even a little before that. Yep. A lot of times, yeah. Just they'll post a caption, but typically the captions aren't like my captions would be, had a great time at Rotary this morning, like such a fun time. Their captions are typically like lyrics from a song or some sort of like creative phrase that really means nothing, but is just a caption to go along with that picture. So it's a very weird, I don't know how to describe. Yeah, it's not a real documentation of their life. I don't know if you've ever been out and about, but it's very, like, one of my favorite pastimes is to like sit at a restaurant or sit on a patio and just watch Instagram photo shoots take place, because they'll like schedule time. I went to what's it called, Central Filling Station on Central, downtown Knoxville. There's like a food truck, and there's this aqua green wall, and there was a group of girls. They had flowers. They had one girl that was like holding flowers and taking pictures. There was another girl that was like instructing her on how to pose. There was another girl that was fluffing her hair for the pictures. And then there was another girl who was like taking the pictures from all the angles. So they're going to massive lengths to try to create this image online. I should have included it, but I saw something came out this summer where being an online, like YouTube personality or a social media influencer is actually the most desired career by teenagers, over anything like doctor, lawyer, anything like that. Being a social media personality is the most desired career by teenagers. So Snapchat, I don't know how much you guys know about Snapchat, like its functionality, but it's essentially you have your phone, and it's an app that you can take pictures or videos on. It always opens to your face, so it doesn't open shooting outward. The app opens shooting. You can twist it that way, but it always opens shooting to your face, and you can take pictures or videos and add text to them, and then you send them to somebody, and then they have a certain amount of time. You can set how long they have to view that picture or video, and unless they screenshot it, it disappears, quote unquote, forever after they've seen it for that 10-second window or that 5-second window. It shouldn't stay there forever. But I was saying this a little bit earlier, like when I was in high school, if I didn't have plans with a kid after school, from 3:45 on, I just didn't talk to him until the next day, for the most part. There were times where we'd call or we'd actually get on the computer and message back and forth. But for the most part, I didn't have to talk to them until the next day. So I got a little break where I got to get away from them, spend time with my family, or like take a nap, or just be by myself and come up with creative things to do. Now they have this pressure to be in communication 24/7. And I'll show you a little bit more about all the things that they read into on Snapchat here in a second. Because of that pressure, they're always evaluating and reevaluating where they stand with their peers. So if you'll go, this is kind of the meat of it. If you'll go to the next slide, and then you can just click through all these. You can click through all the little ones. Yeah, okay. So it didn't show up as well, but the top, so if you're the receiver of a snap, this is what it shows up like next to someone's name. So if you get a red square that's filled in, that means you've received a photo, but you haven't opened it yet. A purple square that's filled in is a video that you've received that you haven't opened yet. And then a blue square just means they can kind of swipe to a certain side and just text. They don't use the messages app on their phone. They do all their texting through Snapchat because they think that it disappears forever. So there's like some safety to that, I guess. But a blue square that's filled in means that you have a chat from somebody that you haven't opened. Any of those icons that are hollow means you've opened them. And then any of these little cross things means that you have, in that color, you've screenshotted it. So you've either screenshotted their photo, screenshotted a time on their video, or screenshotted the chat. So if you'll go to the next one. Okay, so yeah, you can go and then just stop right there. So the receiving, right? Receiving is not the big deal. If you receive something, then that's all well and dandy. But if you get, they call this second one in the middle, they call it open arrowed or left on read. So if you send something and it is received, opened, read, or viewed, but it's not responded to, like that can legitimately like fracture relationships. Because there's this constant pressure to be in communication. And if you don't respond to something that they send, that means that you don't care about them, right? And I'll show you here in a little bit, I'll show you some of the stuff that they send that's absolutely ridiculous that they expect people to respond to. But if you send something and you get open arrowed and you don't get a response back from them, that can be the end of the world. Like that can mean that this person doesn't care about me, they're ignoring me, like they don't want to communicate with me anymore, they don't want to be friends with me, anything like that. If you get screenshotted, you can't trust that person, right? Like he screenshotted this or she screenshotted this. That means that they're going to take a picture of something that you sent them, or take a picture of a video, or take a picture of something that you said, and they're going to spread it around. That means that they're going to take something where you don't look good or you've said something mean, and they're going to make sure that other people know that you've done that. So it can really fracture relationships in that way as well. These are goofy, but you can go ahead and show them. So this is bad, but these are pictures that I took on Sunday. I was making this. I just woke up from a nap, so I didn't look great. But they will send pictures of their forehead and just the ceiling. And the reason that they send pictures of their forehead is because they don't want to see like the rest of your face, because they think that they don't look good. So they'll send just a picture of their forehead, no text, because they don't really have anything to say at that point. But they want to stay in touch. So if you get a picture of just a forehead, and sometimes it'll just be the lights on the ceiling, but they expect the other person to respond to that. They expect the other person to snap back and respond to that. And if they don't snap back, that means that they're ignoring them or they don't care about them. So there's this weird thing where they don't really have anything to say, but by sending pictures of your forehead or of the corner of your eye, you're staying in contact. And that's how you're continuing to develop a relationship or continuing to stay in touch with each other. But there's really no communication going on. There's just a back and forth of seeing each other's faces. And that's how they're developing relationships or making sure that they still stand on good ground with their peers. Oh yeah, no, it's horrible. And by like having someone, so you'll see kids when they're scrolling through, they'll have a bunch that are more recent that they've opened and they've responded to, but then they'll leave people undelivered, right? And they won't open them intentionally, which kind of leads to this next one actually. And this is where it gets kind of nutty. If you're left undelivered, right? If I sent you a snap and you hadn't opened it for 4 hours, then I start thinking like, is she ignoring me? Like, does she actually have something to do, or is she ignoring me? Well, what you can do is you can go to one page on their profile where you can see, and it's circled, or it's in a red square right there. It's called their snap score. And you can see, you get a snap score, and then it goes up each time you send a snap. So each time you send a snap, your snap score goes up by 1. So if I sent you a snap and you haven't opened it for 4 hours, I start to think, is she ignoring me? Is she mad at me? Does she care about me? Then I start getting curious. I go to your page, I look at your snap score, and then I go back and see if it's gone up from the last time I looked at it. And then I know that you're intentionally not open in mind and you're ignoring it because you're responding to other people. Right? So there's just so much over analyzing and reevaluating of relationships with each other. The next thing is a map. So this is, I've heard of breakups happening. I've heard of people catching each other cheating by the map. So somebody will send you a snap, tell you where they are, or they'll tell you that they're doing a certain thing. Well, if they have a certain service turned on, you can swipe to a certain page and you can see exactly where they are at all times. So somebody will tell you they're at their parents' house eating dinner, and then they're not responding to you for a certain while. You see their snap score go up. Then you go to their map, you find out they're not actually at their parents' house, but they're at Johnny's house. And that's how you caught the person cheating or the relation, or they're doing something so you can't trust them and the relationship can end at that point. It's a super stressful game to play. If you'll go to the next one, you can just click through both of these. I also think that like it becomes so easy to have conversations on the phone. Like it becomes so much easier to just send pictures or send messages via text that we don't develop the skills to have those conversations face to face. So you can't read facial expressions. You can overanalyze what somebody's saying on the phone because you're not able to see their facial expression. You're not able to experience their tone. So then in your mind, what they said can mean something totally different than what they thought they said. And if you're not able to have a face-to-face conversation in the meantime, you're overanalyzing what they said, and then it becomes a much bigger deal than it might have been if you were able to actually have that conversation in person. Okay. And then difficulty with face-to-face conversations, they have a really hard time seeing when somebody's mad at them. Like when somebody disagrees with them, they have a really hard time seeing that and being in that tense, uncomfortable place where you might disagree and have to have a difficult conversation. I'll go through TikTok pretty quick. TikTok, I don't know, it's like you scroll through and there's short little videos. There's a lot of dance videos and then there's a lot of challenges. They will spend hours on there, but they're only able to keep their attention on one video for like 8 seconds. That's what the data is saying, is that their attention span is actually down to about 8 seconds now. Another form of validation by numbers. They get their validation based on how many followers or how many likes they get on the app. A lot of the videos, you'll see a lot of dances, and then for whatever reason, girls will end it just by showing their butt. And honestly, that's the easiest way for them to get their followers and get their likes up, which is how they validate themselves. So there's a ton of sexualization that happens on TikTok. And then there are challenges each month that can affect relationships and can affect, honestly, our school culture. So last month, the challenge was devious licks, which I don't know if you guys heard about this, but the challenge was just to steal something from the school. So there were some schools where lockers were ripped off the wall and it was filmed the whole time. We had like toilet paper holders stolen, the little blue thing in the urinal, which is absolutely disgusting. But just random things were stolen from the school. This month, the challenge, luckily I haven't experienced it, but the challenge is to slap a teacher. So if you'll go to the next one, this is different, but there's a big pressure to succeed. And honestly, I think a lot of the pressure to succeed comes from the parents and comes from home. And a lot of it is for the parents to be able to talk to other parents about how successful their child is. And the 3 biggest ways that I see that pressure to succeed to play out is in the A's, which would be academics, athletics, and quote unquote attractiveness. So you can be proud of your kid for how successful they are academically, how successful they are athletically, or if they're one of the more attractive / popular kids in the school. The next slide is, it's getting like a lot more, there's a certain population that just gets into the academics and just dives all in. But there is a lot of pressure across the board for how difficult it is to get into certain schools. So then kids are spending so much more time taking harder and harder classes in addition to all the extracurriculars they're taking. And they're going to sleep at like 2 a.m. They're trying to take 8 AP classes every year just because they think they need that to get into a certain school. These schools, Tennessee is considered less selective. 68% of their students have a 3.75 high school GPA or higher. 78% get accepted, but the median ACT score is between 24 and 30. and that's a less selective school. I had a 2.9 high school GPA. So that's, I mean, I got accepted to UT, but that just kind of shows you how much it's increased over the past 12 years and how much more difficult it's getting over the course of time. You can look at the other ones. Vanderbilt, for whatever reason, is the dream school of a lot of kids around here. And kids are having to drive themselves into the ground in order to get accepted to Vanderbilt. And then I don't know if you've seen the documentary about the college admissions scandal, but then it's completely devastating when kids spend their whole high school career driving themselves into the ground and don't get accepted. So there's a big pressure to succeed academically, athletically, and otherwise. I'll finish. I don't have any other slides, but I'll finish and take any questions. But I think there's a couple more things going on. Like right now at Farragut, we're having protests every day regarding the mask mandate. So kids are literally having to walk through protests to go to school. You know, the 24/7 news cycle is a big deal, and they're seeing a lot of negativity just in the world. There's a lot of anxiety, suicidal ideation. Last year we did, I think, 80 suicide assessments, 80 plus assessments on kids who had suicidal thoughts and needed immediate treatment. So there's a lot of, they're great kids, they're very fun, but there's a lot of things that I think we need to figure out as a society in order to help them in terms of their mental health and just in terms of like taking those next steps as adults. So that's all I've got. I'm
gonna hold the question.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you stay a few minutes?
Yeah. I'm working myself out till 10. So
Oh,
I can
okay,
stay.
so, and we'll keep the Zoom up in case somebody has a question.
Okay.
Um,
Do you want me to stay here?